Hey everyone, I'm Aidan Walls and today we are looking at the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I made a video a while back that's done fairly well, saying that you should consider the Anbernic RG505. While I still think that advice is valid, one of the main reasons was because this thing just wasn't available. If you ordered it, you'd wait months to get it. That issue has now been fixed, and so with the availability being corrected, I decided to re-look at this device as an exceptional value for money, albeit not a truly retro gaming device. So let's get into it. What I want to do is I quickly want to talk about the ethics. So Retroid released the Retroid Pocket 3, then they released the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus just a couple of months later. And while there are some pretty sketchy dealings in behind the scenes, Taki Udon made a video about that. At the end of the day, Retroid were trying to save their skins financially. There was some issue with manufacturing and all that kind of thing. And they did release a upgrade kit for anyone who bought the Retroid Pocket 3 and wanted to get the performance boost of this device. And it's a decent performance boost, but it's not enough to say, wow, they really screwed us over. I feel like, there's so many other devices doing similar things. I heard that there was something with the Razer Edge now where, people paid for a certain amount of RAM and they're only getting X amount, it's a lesser amount. So these sort of things are going on all the time. It doesn't make it right, but I think the way Retroid handled it compared to other Chinese manufacturers, I do think it's worth giving them the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, and if you are concerned that the Retroid Pocket 4 is just around the corner, the rumors on the rumor mill with Retroid are a clamshell device, rumored to be the same power as this, which sounds amazing, and then a vertical device. For us vertical device lovers, an Android-based, highly powered Retroid device would be stunning. So with that out the way, let's get into the review. I want to analyze the hardware. And so the first thing I want to do is look at the buttons. So these R1 and L1 buttons have got a bit of a rough edge here. So if you kind of stick your finger in here, you can feel a bit of a burr on the plastic, which tells you they didn't chamfer the plastic when it was originally, injection molded. So that's like little things that will maybe bother you. The same story here, just underneath this trigger button is quite sharp. But it's all in places that aren't really going to bother you, and you're not really going to kind of stick your finger in those edges. So that's not a big deal. I think the R2 and L2 buttons are pretty flawless. The clickiness is a sort of a soft click. Let me just put it by the mic. Sounds really nice. And I've spoke about this in my unboxing video, but this groove that they've created for your finger to slide into is really nice. So you find yourself sitting like this, and then when you need to press the L1 and R1, you lift your fingers. That is your default gaming position with your finger stuck in those grooves. So I really like that about these R2 and L2 buttons. So I spoke about minor little quality issues. I don't know if you're going to hear it now in my office, but I'm going to put this up against the mic. But this analog stick actually has a squeak to it. So when I'm playing in bed at night and my wife's sleeping, listen to this. I don't know if you could hear that squeak, but in the still of the night, and in our country there's rolling blackouts, and so it is like very, very silent sometimes at night, and you can just, it sounds like a creaking door sometimes to me. So little quality issues like that, to me, that is a little bit unacceptable, to have an analog stick that's squeaking like that. But this being a sort of hobbyist world, Retroid have just released their Hall sensor stick. So if this becomes my daily driver over the next year or two, I'll definitely replace these with Hall sensors, because the Hall sensors will give more sensitivity for steering in racing games, which is one of my favorite type of games. So anyway, there's no way really to spin this as a positive, but your start and select buttons are here. So, if you're playing an NES game, and like for instance Darkwing Duck, I've got to press select to enable the special gas on the game. And so when I'm playing on my RG280V, I just quickly tap on select and then do the gas and then do it off, and I sometimes have to do that in combination moves. So that just is a ridiculous place for start and select buttons. Anyway, so people complain about the fact that the volume buttons are here on the left. It's not a very stiff press, so you can accidentally press the volume button. So I will concede that this is a problem. I have pressed volume down once since playing it intensively since I got it. And then the home button is on the right here. That also isn't a super stiff press, but I've yet to press that. It's here. And so people who are saying they press it while they're gaming, I don't know how they're holding their device. If they're holding it like this or something, I don't know what they're doing, but I've never pressed that. So I've actually taken Retro Game Core's recommendation and disabled the double press for this. So I just press it once and then it goes back to Daijisho. So yeah, just a top tip there. So some people complain about the D-pad not being perfect for, shooting fireballs and that in Street Fighter. And I've been testing it and it seems fine to me. Maybe it's a little bit worse than a nice rubber membrane on a retro gaming console, but I shoot fireballs in, Street Fighter Alpha 2 without any issues. And also these buttons, these face buttons and the D-pad seem to have absolutely no body scrape. My Miu Mini is getting worse and worse over time. I just don't think you're ever going to have a body scrape issue, which by body scrape, I mean the button actually scraping against the body of the device. And then you get this sort of dust around the button. And I just don't think that's going to happen with these buttons. So I quickly want to compare this to the 351P in terms of buttons. So you'll see that the buttons, the face buttons and the D-pad are bigger on the 351P compared to the RP3 Plus. Now, the more I play it, the more I realize I'm not going to get used to this, especially if I'm switching between these devices. If you've got nothing to compare it to, you will get used to it. But the thing about this is that I handed it to a family member who's got big hands, and I said, finally a device that's big enough for your hands. But these buttons are just so small for his big thumbs. And so I don't know why Retroid went for this sort of style. Maybe they were just trying to distance themselves from being like Anbernic. But yeah, there's just some confusing decision making with the design of this. Like these are dome switches, so these have got a clickiness to them, and these are rubber membrane. So these very similar. These have got a bit of a softer press to them, but so these are a little bit stiffer, but they're bigger, and these are bigger, and which I just much prefer. I prefer playing on this in terms of the buttons. I have to admit that the holding position and the grip of this is lovely, but overall in terms of the D-pad, this is a dome switch D-pad. It's just something to get used to, and that's definitely something of preference. But I'm undecided in terms of which one I prefer here. But definitely the face buttons on the RG351P I prefer by a long shot. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a verdict for you here. This is something that you'll get used to. There's so many other things about the RP3 Plus that will win you over in comparison to a device like this. Obviously cost saving. This is a wonderful device, but we're going to talk about the other things that make this thing exceptional. So let's quickly do a shake test. This device actually, it has no shake. So this is the first device that I've purchased. I had to mod my RG35XX in order to make it not shake anymore. So that's my RG35XX doesn't shake anymore, but I had to actually put a tape on there, and you can watch my in-depth review about this and setup guide on how I did that. Okay, so I'm going to quickly walk you through the body of this device. So talking about this shell. So I first want to talk about the actual plastic that they've used to make this. So the one creak that I can find is here. If I squeeze this, no, it's fine. Maybe I've squeezed it in, but there is a bit of a squeak on this side. The plastic feels really good. So I talked in my unboxing about perceived quality, and I was very careful to talk about perceived quality because there definitely are small quality issues with this device. I think maybe Anbernic have got the one up on them in terms of quality control, but in terms of the feel of this plastic and the way that it's rounded and the design choices that were made, it feels really good. But that feels very brittle compared to, if I had to compare these, this is like a piece of Tupperware from the olden days. That was just, people said you could drive cars over it or whatever, which wasn't true, but still it was very strong. This is more like the cheaper alternative that you buy in South Africa. The place is called Checkers, where you buy cheaper plastic alternative stuff for your lunches and stuff. This is a ridiculous analogy, but yeah, so that's the way that I can explain it. When you go and you're trying to save some costs and you buy your kids a cheaper lunchbox and it ends up breaking in a week, that's what this is. So This is not a droppable device. If you drop this, the shell will break. But again, although their shipping is ridiculous, Retroid do offer shells to buy, and this is a hobby community, like I mentioned, easy to repair. I think they even do like a screen kit. I'm not sure about the screen, but I know you can get new buttons and all that sort of thing. So yeah, the shell definitely is not droppable by any stretch of the imagination. We've talked about the button start select. This is the power button. I didn't mention that. This is so on all my devices, I've got a mini HDMI out. Now this is the micro HDMI out, which I don't have, so I can't test that for this video. But there is your micro HDMI output. On the back, you actually have passive cooling. So there are your passive cooling vents. Let's just turn it this way. So on the bottom, you've got the 2 passive cooling vents there and one big one there. And then the screw holes at the back here. So the speaker grills are here. So this device curves around like this. So this is the back of the device, and the speaker holes are here. So it's slightly at the back of the curve, which means it's going to fire away from you. When you're holding it like this, the speakers are there, So that is a small issue, but the thing about this device is all my other previous devices that I've gotten so far for the channel don't have Bluetooth for audio. This has Bluetooth for audio, and I have lovely rip-off AirPods and fake pods, and they work beautifully with this. And so I'm using that more and more. I just put one in one ear, and then I've got some audio, because I feel like the audio with retro gaming is like half the experience. And so I'm using the audio on the device a lot less, but the audio is good, and we'll do a test on that just now. There's your 3.5mm headphone jack. This is a USB-C port for, you can put controllers in there for charging any other peripherals, and then also to connect your computer. And this is the SD card slot where I've put a 128 gig card slot. Okay, let's quickly do a light bleed test. Just wait for the screen to come back on. This is a see-through device, and I'm not seeing any lights coming out anywhere on the device. Nothing. I mean, I've been playing this in the dark, and I haven't seen anything that would suggest that. So yeah, light bleed test is kind of pointless because there's no light bleed on this device. Okay. I actually didn't expect that. So there's a rumor that this is apparently an iPhone 6 screen. I don't know, but it seems really nice. The touch responsiveness is really good. I was noticing today on the bottom edges, I couldn't touch select this folder. So the edges aren't as responsive as they could be, but that could be a firmware issue actually. So I wouldn't jump to conclusions about that being an issue with the screen. So I tested the resolution on PSP. I used Outrun 2006 as a good example, and I did it at a 3x resolution, and it looked absolutely stunning. It looked really crisp and really good. Here's a close-up of the footage on the game itself, and you can see that it is a very, very high quality. Oh, she's upset with me because I crashed. Very high resolution. So that I find that really impressive, that you can now play PSP at a 3x resolution on the screen. And the screen practically, I can't find any quality issues on how it's fitted. Like I said, I do have those dead spots at the bottom, but that might be a software issue. Anyway, so as far as I can see, the screen is good. This device has 400 nits brightness. I know a little bit about this because the external monitor that I bought for my studio is 500 nits, and it's barely usable outdoors with a sun hood. So you're not going to get fantastic outdoor use out of this. What will stand it in good stead is the high contrast quality screen, that you'll be able to see the things on the screen better just because of the quality of the screen. So in terms of size, so let's quickly look at this. Let's compare this to the RG351P. So the RG351P is a wonderfully pocketable device in terms of size. Now, the reason that the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus can have the word pocket in its name is because of the thickness of the device. So, and because of the round edges. So if we look at this here, let's put it this way. You're going to see that the RG351P has a good 3-4 millimeters over the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, in terms of thickness. And then the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus also has these rounded edges. It does have the triggers over here, but the difference of seeing this, because it's thicker in my pocket, and this is not a huge difference, even though it does obviously have a much bigger overall size. So, I think they've done a wonderful job in optimizing the size of this device. So in terms of overall build quality, I definitely would say that they're getting there. Apparently, I haven't ever tested a Retroid Pocket 2, the 2 Plus. Apparently, they've made leaps and strides in terms of the quality of their devices. I wouldn't say it's quite on the level of the Anbernic devices in terms of overall quality. There's a lot of saving grace features of this, like the overall design of it, the way that they've designed it, the cleverness of some of the design elements. The start and the select button, not great, but there's so many other saving grace elements to this device. And the overall quality, if I had to give Anbernic 80%, I would put this at 65-70% in terms of build quality. And then these are just subjective metrics, but I want to talk about the feeling in hand. So firstly, I mentioned that this plastic really does feel nice in the hand. It's a textured plastic that they've molded. And then the fact that these trigger buttons just shape so nicely to your fingers, it really does have a lovely feeling in hand. Sometimes, it's a nice device to grip. So I'll often just be playing like this with my fingers there and with my thumbs. And then if I'm playing Assassin's Creed, I'm playing like this. You don't grip the device as much between your hands as you do with a smaller device. And even though a lot of people want hand grips, I've got long fingers. I do find this to be a really nice feeling in hand. I enjoy all my devices, like the 351P. I think is a great device to hold in the hand, but this definitely has a leg up, purely because of its size, and then also because of the rounded edges. It's really nice to hold in the hand. For the audio test, I'm going to be using a couple of devices. I'm using the RG351P, the 351V, which is a front-firing speaker, and then I'm going to use my iPad Pro as sort of a control device for a more higher-end sound, because I don't have anything better than the RP3 Plus. And so let's give it a go. I'm going to do the title screen for Sonic 2. So the clear winner there is the iPad, and I was surprised. I thought the audio on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus would be far superior to the other two devices, and it just isn't. There's clear distortion in the little sparkles. I like using that test because there's these high bits and high frequency bits and low frequency bits, and all of them distort when those little sparkles come on the screen, and throughout there's a little bit of distortion. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, I think, wins by a hair's breadth, and purely because I think the speakers might be a little bit bigger. I'm not sure. I'll have to inspect that at a later stage. Okay, the next thing is ergonomics. I think I've already talked this to death, but the only thing really missing on this device is the palm grips, like where it bulges out on the end here. Otherwise, it's rounded. It's got the nice spot here on the trigger buttons for your finger. The edges feel really good, and I find the reach is comfortable. I've been playing a lot of PSP on here, and I do find the reach for the joysticks is comfortable. So overall, I'd give this, if I was doing a score rating out of 10, I would give this the ergonomics of about a 6 or a 7, putting into the account there are devices out there that are far bigger and have chunkier grips to grip onto. So I think that's pretty good. So in terms of connectivity, the RP3 Plus has Wi-Fi 5. It has a dual Bluetooth. It has HDMI at 720p. It has a headphone output, USB-C for controllers and things like that, and a TF card input that I showed you at the bottom here. To interpret that, Wi-Fi 5 gives you faster Wi-Fi connectivity compared to a lot of devices. Dual Bluetooth means that you can connect headphones and a controller at the same time. They're different Bluetooth protocols and they connect to this device. HDMI at 720p, I want to say something about this because you'll look at that and think, well, 720p is nothing. But if you have a more affordable flat screen TV at home, you know, an LCD TV, a lot of those, especially the older ones, are actually only rendering at 720p. So, so you might be paying for higher resolution on your Netflix account, but you're actually only getting 720p on your TV. So just check the settings on your TV, and you might be surprised to find out that 720p is the resolution you're watching everything at anyway. And then you can plug your wired headphones in and you can connect a controller to the USB-C port. All right, so how useful is Bluetooth really? So I want to talk about the real world experience. I have been using this extensively. I made a post saying the RG351P is my daily driver. I was going to make it my daily driver, but I just have not been able to put this device down. I'm not sure where I'm going to settle because I want to find a device that I'm not doing reviews on and videos on so that I can just use it permanently. And one of the daily usage making life easier features is the Bluetooth. So I have these sort of rip-off AirPods, so they connect to Android and iOS, and I use those for this. And what that means is I can put one headphone in my ear, I can sit anywhere and kind of, people don't even know that I'm getting audio. It's a really low key way of getting the audio. And for me, I find that audio on especially retro games is kind of part of the experience. It just brings back that nostalgia and all that. So having the Bluetooth, so if I did make the RG351P my daily driver, the thing I'm going to miss is if I'm waiting in a queue somewhere, I can't get audio. I could get my wired headphones, but it's such a mission, and I think that's taking retro a little bit too far in terms of it's just inconvenient. And so the Bluetooth connectivity for headphones really has been great. And then also Bluetooth connectivity with a controller. I've got a tiny little Bluetooth controller here in the studio. It works fine. I'm not a big fan of kind of plugging this into the TV and using it. I find it cumbersome. So it does do that. And I think a lot of people will enjoy having this as a dockable where you plug the micro HDMI out to your TV and then use a Bluetooth controller. There's some lovely 8BitDo is the brand. I'll put some links below of the 8BitDo controllers that would work beautifully with this. So we'll talk about this a few times in the video, but there are a few hints that Retroid weren't 100% sure who this product is for. I just find in the marketing it's kind of dualistic because, we've got the D-pad here, which tells me, okay, it's a retro gaming device. But then we've got a 16:9 screen, which suits streaming from your TV, from your computer. So it's kind of, and then, I'm using it as a PSP device, but a PSP would do better with the joystick over there. So it's kind of muddled in terms of who this device is for. So long story short, I feel like the retro styling doesn't suit this device, especially with my blue. I feel like this device is on the border of a true gamer's device, being like not being able to play full PC games yet, but can play and stream games that are slightly more higher end first-person shooters and those sorts of things, but then also plays retro games. And for me, it is the ultimate PSP device. And so I'm going to get Sakura modding Sony style buttons. I'll put the link as well below, because he's a very reliable source for these mod buttons and things like that. And so I'm definitely going to make this look more like a PSP. So the initial setup and experience of this is, no lies, very confusing and difficult. When I first got it, the reason I have this channel is because these sorts of things just come naturally to me. Tech and understanding tech and setting these things up, I just seem to have a knack for it. And so when I got this, I thought to myself, jeepers, am I really as good as I think I am at these things? So it took me about 2 days to really settle and understand this device, because also I don't have an Android phone. I'm an iOS user, and so Android was also slightly unfamiliar to me. And then also the front ends and understanding, because, you know, our Linux devices are brilliant because things like Anbernic kind of do a lot of the things for you. This, you really have to set it up, and I will do an in-depth guide on Android. I've now got the RG353P, so I think it's time for me to get into Android and sink my teeth into what I think are the best solutions for especially beginners. And so I'm definitely going to make a video about that, but I'm not going to lie, it is confusing and difficult to set up. But just to give you a quick rundown, if you have just gotten this and you're super confused and you've just landed on my video and you're thinking, how the hell do I get through this? The first thing is, when you start this thing up, just load, like I did in the setup of this device, just load all the emulators, and then go in and set each emulator up. Just Google, if you see, for instance, DuckStation. What is DuckStation? Google what it's for. Set it up the way you think it's going to work nicely for you, and then go into the front end. I recommend Daijisho. I highly recommend it. I don't think you should mess around with anything else. Then connect. The Daijisho should select the emulators for you anyway. So as long as your emulators have been set up already, you should be fine. If you have any issues, then just go through and find the place where you need to select the emulator. And then you find the place where you've stored your ROMs through Daijisho, connect it to where your ROMs are, scan it, and you should be able to play. That's a very rough and ready guide, and I'm definitely going to do an in-depth thing on that, so, you know, just to kind of give you a rough guide of how that should work. All right, so I want to do a short little review on Daijisho. It is hands down the best Android front end right now. It's done by a developer, just like with the Linux systems. Somebody out of the goodness of his heart has made this beautiful system for us. And here are a few features that make it a perfect choice for everyone. So the overall design and layout. So it has these big screens with all the little bits and pieces that you need. You tap on your system, you scroll through. I like the grid view. Some people might like the list view. And you go through, you choose your game. Here you can just tap on the game and it plays. And it's just really well thought out. You know, for instance, if you tap on there, player settings, this chooses the emulator. For the most part, it chooses your emulators for you. So that's already done, and then you just go to paths, and you choose the path, the place on your device where your emulators are stored. And then the highlights page, what I like about this is, when I first saw it, I thought it was pretty useless, but what I realized is you tap on where it says favorites, now it's newly, so newly added games. Recently played. This is nice, well, personally for me, when I'm doing reviews, to go back and go, oh, what was that game that I was testing? And I can go back here to recently, and then my favorites. But what I really like are the widgets where you can do, so these are the games that I'm currently playing. It also does, you know, continue the last game you were playing, how much I've played today. I haven't really used the device. A random picker, and you can choose your widgets here. So you can choose any widget here and then add it. So, you know, put the games that you currently are using and put it here, and it kind of gets rid of that sort of analysis paralysis, the spoiled for choice situation. So that's really nice. And then one of the big things compared to the Retroid launcher is the fact that the apps are here. So if you set this as your front end, so as my home screen, I have now set Daijisho, then I still have access to my apps. With the Retroid launcher, you have to go out of the Retroid launcher, access your apps, go back into the Retroid launcher. So that's really nice. So everything is here. So if I'm in a game and I press the Homes button, it's going to go to Daijisho, not to the home screen. So that's really nice. Anyway, there's a lot more to get into, and I'm definitely going to do a full Android workup for beginners. But yeah, it really is nice, and the more I use it, the more I'm convinced it's the absolute best. And I'm actually kind of falling in love with the whole Android experience. I'm not sure, I've just got the RG353P. I'm not sure if it's really ideal for that device, but on a device like this, it is wonderful. So performance, it's very time consuming for me as a reviewer to play lots and lots of games and then give a quality review on performance, because truth be told, I think a lot of reviewers play the game for a few minutes and then exit and go, okay, it plays. There is a spreadsheet that's been made by the community, and I would rely that spreadsheet over and above myself and any other reviewer, because it's been peer tested. So a lot of people have gone in and gone, that's actually not playable, let's downgrade it to not playable or whatever. So there's a spreadsheet there. There are some games that I personally have been playing, and I will tell you about those now. So I haven't got into PS2 yet, but the PSP games that I've played, so I played Assassin's Creed all the way through at 3x resolution. That's fantastic. So it's just crystal clear. So that is just crystal clear. It's just a lovely picture, and look how nicely it's rendering even the haze over him. It really looks good. It looks fantastic. So that is a good one to emulate. And then I've just started God of War Chains of Olympus. Apparently Ghost of Sparta struggles a little bit, but this I'm playing at a 2x resolution. It jumps around the frames per second, but playability is pretty high. There you can see at 2x that also looks really stunning. Whoops, I'm busy fighting a boss at the moment. Anyway, so God of War Chains of Olympus is actually looking pretty good, and I've been playing that extensively. So there's a little bit of stutter here and there, but you can play it really nicely on this device. Other games that I've kind of popped into and had a look around on is Asphalt 2. A little bit of stutter, but it renders really nicely. Now, Outrun 6, as I mentioned on the screen review, Outrun 6 just looks stunning at 3x. Virtua Tennis plays almost flawlessly. So PSP is really good on the system. So I'm going to quickly take you through my PSP settings that I use. Most systems use Vulkan, so I stick with Vulkan over there. Buffered rendering, don't mess around with buffered rendering unless you're really having an issue. But the thing is, buffered rendering can create some pretty serious graphical anomalies, so I wouldn't really mess around with that. Auto frame skip, you can leave it on because it's barely noticeable if you have auto frame skip on. So this is a good sort of cure-all setting for all your games. My full screen is on, but I actually want to leave it off. You see there, it's going to stretch it. I don't want full screen on. I'm not sure why that was on. And then for most games, most easy to play games, 3x is going to be fine. And then you can just reduce your resolution depending on the game. So for instance, when I play God of War, Ghost of Sparta, I'm going to try 1x and see if it works. But for Assassin's Creed, 3x is good. So that's basically it. That's all I really mess around there. And then in that spreadsheet, they do offer some .ini files that help you set the game up per game. So then for each game, it will load those settings. Okay, so to quickly talk about PS2 gaming, I would use that spreadsheet for now. I haven't done extensive testing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do any sort of videos or any content about this, but use that spreadsheet. It's going to guide you on what games are going to work, what games aren't going to work. I just loaded Silent Hill 2 and it's not looking good for that game. But this Capcom versus SNK 2 works very, very well. I don't want you to think that this is not a retro gaming device from my heavy focus on the 16:9 screen aspect ratio. This screen is just sublime. And obviously, I have already worked my way through my favorite Darkwing Duck on this device. Being my favorite game, it does give me a sense of where this device sits in terms of gameplay experience. And I have to say, the small buttons are something to get used to. However, the overall gameplay is pretty much flawless. And that screen really makes it a special device to play retro games on. Game Boy Advance is exceptional, stretched over that large screen, and things like CRT filters for SNES also now look great because they're rendered properly on this high resolution screen. So we're using a high resolution screen to make it look like an old crappy 80s screen. Okay, so game streaming. You'll see there's a Moonlight app. If you installed all the apps when you started this Android system, Moonlight would have installed. Now, when you first start Moonlight, you'll see your computer should pop up if you are running an NVIDIA card on your laptop or computer. And then there will be a little lock sign in that screen. You tap on it, and then a pop-up will come up on your computer with a little pin. The pin will be here. Put that pin in your laptop, and then it should just connect. So if it doesn't show Steam, go into your GeForce software and make sure Steam is there. If not, add it via your programs and apps. Add Steam, and then it should appear here. So now I can connect this, resume session. I've had one or two glitches, but if you just be persistent and keep trying to connect, you maybe restart the app, restart your laptop, you will eventually get connected. There are a few issues. So some of the issues are if the Wi-Fi chip, for instance, the Wi-Fi chip on my laptop sucks. And I'm having issues with that because it's quite slow, the streaming at times. If your modem is slow, if you don't have a very high-speed modem, that will also cause an issue. Yeah, and so if your Wi-Fi system in your house sucks, then unfortunately that's just what you're going to have to deal with. This is a retro game, so the streaming hasn't been an issue on this. I tried another game. It was an indie game, a zombie game, and it struggled a little bit with that. It said lower the bitrate. But this older game is working fine, this older PC game. And so again, I want to put things into a little bit of perspective here. For me, I think that's what this streaming situation with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is all about. It's not a super high-end device. It's not a portable PC. It is a middle-of-the-range PC game or a high-end retro gaming device, if you want to put it that way. So these retro PC games, let's say for instance you've got some PC games that you just can't find anywhere else, then you can stream them to this device and it works perfectly well. I'm quite enjoying this because it's actually stretched the game to the size of the device. This game is actually like this, but it looks fine stretched to the screen, so it's quite enjoyable. And then obviously you're using it with a controller. Someone said to me, well, what's the point of streaming games to your device? And I said to them, well, it's actually a bit of an industry. You know, there's the Logitech G Cloud that's dedicated just to streaming. There are people in the world who are willing to pay a lot of money to stream games to their handheld so they can play in bed or in their lounge and they don't have to deal with a PC. I, for one, have grown tired of PC gaming. It's something that I kind of lost interest a long time ago. Just playing on a keyboard doesn't feel intuitive to me. And so this is great. And also I prefer handheld gaming. And so, yeah, that's what I feel like this is for. And then Android gaming. I downloaded Real Racing. The only downside is that these games are quite big. What is nice about them is that they are designed, a lot of them are set up for handheld, adding a controller to your phone. And so this Real Racing really works very well. You know, the graphics are great, the audio is great, it feels like it's completely optimized for this device. It does take up a lot of space, but, you know, Android gaming really does work very, very well on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. And then I also just wanted to mention, you know, for a commute on a long trip, on a train or a plane ride, when you're traveling, you know, you've paired your headphones, your Bluetooth headphones to this. Something like YouTube and something that I actually use is Spotify. Just to remember, this is an Android game, an Android phone, basically, with a controller attached to it. Pairing your headphones and playing a bit of music works. Obviously, the speakers aren't great, but I do actually use this because...
I'll say goodbye to gossamer sky.
Yeah, I mean, the audio is okay, but paired to a Bluetooth speaker or Bluetooth headphones, it works really nicely. So I want to talk about why you would buy the Anbernic RG505. The Anbernic selling points is that it's probably, I haven't tested it yet, but knowing Anbernic, it's probably better quality. Anbernic did rush to the market with the RG505 to compete with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, so that's something to note. It has the actual PSP screen in it. So it's got an OLED PSP screen on it. And, you know, I think Anbernic knew who they were marketing the device for too, but I don't think it quite works. OLED is great. Each pixel is illuminated separately, which means your blacks are darker and your highlights are brighter. But this is a higher resolution screen and you just can't get around it. The screen, I am willing to put money on it, is just the real world feel is better on the screen because it just has a higher resolution. And so even though you've got an OLED screen on the RG505, I do think this is still going to be the better bet. And the Anbernic doesn't have HDMI out. So this is a dockable device. You can connect it to your TV and then use a Bluetooth controller. And especially for stuff like NES and SNES, this is great for that. And PS1, very nice for connecting to your TV. So I'd have to get it in the studio, the RG505, but the only thing I really think it has up on this is if you really like that Nintendo Switch Lite look and feel. Other than that, I do think the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus has one up on it in almost every single way, maybe just not on quality. So who is this device for? It's for retro gamers who also enjoy a bit of game streaming, and I feel like it is a dedicated PSP device. If you really love PSP, this is the device for you. But then, I've gone on and on about the 16:9 screen and how I use it for PSP, but I've left this SNES version of Wolfenstein playing in the background because I've set it to that CRT emulation, so it makes it look like an old TV from the olden days. And so this high-resolution screen allows you to emulate it in such a way that it feels retro. And so you're able to emulate that retro look and feel much better on the screen. And even though you've got black bars, I really enjoy playing Game Boy Advance, SNES. I'm enjoying playing my Darkwing Duck, my NES Darkwing Duck on here. It's exceptional for that. The only thing I think where vertical devices have a one-up on a device like this is stuff like Game Boy. I really prefer playing Game Boy on my little RG2 ATV. I haven't really played much Game Boy on here just because it doesn't feel right. You might disagree, but it doesn't feel like the right device for that. And as a bonus, it handles Android games really well. You can play your Netflix on here. You can play your Spotify on here. You can watch YouTube on here. It has a lot of benefits in that regard. Thanks so much for watching. If retro gaming and retro handhelds is something that you're into, please consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one.